So you just logged into Honkai Star Rail, saw the new simulated universe, the Swarm Disaster, jumped into it, skipped the tutorial, and now you're like, yeah, what is going on with this thing? That is what this video is for. We're going to go through everything in the Swarm Disaster, how the map is laid out, the grid, all the different nodes, the buffs you can get to help you progress, the rewards you can get, and how you can unlock all the features inside this new simulated universe, which is an absolutely fantastic feature, which gives us some truly hard content in the game. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about in the simulated universe, the Swarm Disaster, and it was one of the biggest questions before it released, is it a permanent feature or is it a timed event? Everything inside the Swarm Disaster is a permanent feature. None of it is locked behind time gating, like some of the other events we have where, you know, we had the museum where some of it was time gated and some of it was permanent. This event, every reward inside it is permanent. And trust me, this universe is incredibly hard. So do not stress on trying to sweat it out in day one. You can even progress through all the trees, get all the skills unlocked by just going through the easier modes of it to try and get those buffs to help you work into the difficulty 5 and stuff like that. And then only rewards you can't obtain until you clear the difficulty is the actual difficulty rewards itself. So if you can't quite do it, because trust me, it is hard, then don't stress because you're not missing out on an abundance of rewards. It's a solid feature that you can work towards in your progression to try and have a challenge inside the game, which is something that I myself personally have wanted in the game since launch. I've wanted some really challenging content, and for me, this is much harder than the Memory of Chaos. So now we're going to jump into the simulated universe itself and take a look at the mechanics, and then afterwards we will look at the Communing Trial and also the chapter progress and how to unlock all the rewards. And I will have a bunch of timestamps in the description if you want to bounce around to certain things. When you jump into the Swarm Disaster, it's like any other simulated universe. You're going to select your difficulty and download your initial characters. Then you're going to choose your path. Now, keep in mind, paths in this will not all be unlocked. You will unlock them along the way, and if you want to unlock the brand new path that we have, you will have to complete all the chapters, which we'll look at later on. Now, just here, I quickly want to touch on this new path, which is the Propagation. Now, this one is based around consuming a bunch of skill points and using basic attacks. So as you can imagine, Danny Boy, the Imbibitor Lune, is going to benefit greatly from this one. The other character that springs to mind when you look at it is someone like Ching Chui, or QQ if you will, but that is what it's based around. Once again, we're not going to go deep into strategy in this one. I just wanted you guys to know about it, and we'll talk about it further in future videos. Now, the paths do function a bit differently to what they do inside the standard simulated universe, so let's jump in and take a look. For this example, we're going to jump into the Path of the Hunt. Now, when we look at the top, we're going to have our path buffs. There's a dimension effect, which is going to take place normally on the chessboard, which we will take a look at in a minute, but it's on the board, and it's going to be more of a strategic type buff that you can take advantage of when choosing what tiles you want to go to. Then we're going to have a continuous effect. Now, this is your combat buff that you're going to need to play strategically to do the requirements that are going to give you this buff in combat. For instance, if you are the Hunt, you need to destroy as many trotters as possible to increase your allies' crit damage is the basic way that it's going to work. And every path is going to have their own unique dimension effect and continuous effect. Then on top of that, we have die effects. Now, whenever you complete a domain or one of the tiles on the board, instead of going straight into the next domain, you're actually going to go back out to the chessboard, but before you do, you're going to gain one of these die effects. Now, these can have a wide range of things. Anything from changing the range of your movement on the board to giving you buffs on the next battle that you enter. So each path will have different ones of these that give different benefits to that path. Now, the next thing I want to look at is the path resonance, because even this has an overhaul. Now, we still have the standard thing where once you get 3 blessings of your chosen path, you will unlock the resonance. At 6, you get a second upgrade. Then at 10 and 14, you get another upgrade. However, each path has other paths that it synergizes with. So for instance, with the Hunt, if you then obtain 3 blessings of the Abundance once you've unlocked your Hunt Resonance, or 3 blessings of the Elation, you will gain additional effects for those paths. And you can see them down here when you look at it. So if you get the 3 blessings of the Abundance, then after an enemy target's defeated by the Path Resonance, it restores all allies' HP equal to 50% of their respective max HP. So every path will have other paths that it synergizes with, and you can can get these dual resonance effects with them. So now that we understand the basics of the paths, you're going to go ahead and choose your selected path, and then it's going to take you into the Swarm Disaster. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have to choose a plane. Now, you don't really get to choose, you just start off in the first plane, but essentially you got to work your way through 3 planes. And the simplest way to view this is plane 1 is, in traditional simulated universe terms, it's from the start until the first elite mob. Then the second plane is up until the next elite mob, and then the third plane is up until the final boss. So as we jump into the first plane, you will notice what I refer to as the chessboard. Now, once again, the hunt get different buffs, and you will have different effects depending on the path you've chosen. For this one, we got an extra couple trotters in there, which as the hunt, you really want to go ahead and destroy. But in case you don't know what you're looking at on the board, basically every time you make a move, you can move to an adjacent tile, but once you move any tile in the vertical line of the tile you move to, and anything to the left of it will be out of action and you won't be able to move backwards. So just keep that in mind. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through what all the tiles are and what they do. So blank tiles are normally something that will occur due to the effect of one of the paths where you instant clear it and then it becomes a blank one, and basically nothing happens on those. Then you have combat. These are like your standard combats in Simulated Universe, where you're going to receive a blessing when you complete it. Elite's obviously going to be harder combat, but you can get up to a 3-star rarity blessing when you complete it. The boss, once again, you're going to have a boss at the end of the phase. Occurrence are going to be the exact same as the way occurrences act in the standard simulated universe, where you have random interactions that give you differing rewards. Then we got reward ones. Now you're going to select from different rewards. These things can definitely vary. And then you have adventure. Now this is a new one that you wouldn't have seen before, where you've got to do things like run around and basically kill a bunch of trotters using your basic attack and skills in the overworld, not in a standard combat instance. TLDR, Dan IL, OP in this type of thing. Then we have Respite, standard stuff. Now, we do have new things in the transaction where you will sometimes see Scrulium and also Herder in the transaction, where Herder will be giving you Curios and Scrulium will be giving you some blessings. So you can go ahead and exchange for some rewards there in the transaction. Then we have Combat Swarm and Occurrence Swarm. Now, these are kind of like standard combat and also occurrences. However, these are going to be the way you get some of the new blessings inside this simulated universe. But just keep in mind, the Swarm are a lot harder than standard enemies, so these will be a bit more of a challenge, but they will be giving you the new blessings. Moving on from that, we have the Boss Swarm, who is the final boss of the entire run, and we'll take a look at that a bit later on. Then we also have beacons. Now, these beacons are going to be placed on different domains that you can go into, and they're going to give you different enhancements. Now, the enhanced beacon is going to level up blessings when you complete that domain. The mutation one is going to give you additional cosmic fragments, and then you've got Blessing of Trotter, which is going to give you an additional blessing when you defeat that Trotter in that stage. And then we got the Curio Trotter, which is very similar, but it's going to give you Curios. So as I mentioned, when you go into a domain and complete it, you will hit the Communing Device. Now this is where you're going to get your die, which will give you a different effect once you go out to the chessboard. Now you can reroll this. There are ways inside the simulated universe that you can gain additional attempts, but in general you get 1 attempt for the entire simulated universe, so be strategic on using it. But if you want to use it, you just hit reroll and it will give you a different effect. And as you can see here, I've gained the hunt effect to be able to move within the 3 closest rows. So we're going to jump out here, and now you can see I can move within the next 3 rows, being this row here with these 2, this row here with this 1, and then this row as well. Now, being that I am following the hunt, to gain my buff that you can see down the bottom here, I do want to go ahead and kill as many trotters as possible. So I can dance to either one of these trotter ones, but you can actually skip some other paths that you wouldn't be able to take unless you had this specific buff. So I can jump over here and then go ahead and compete against this trotter one. Now, what we're going to do is for the rest of this simulated universe, I'm going to skip through this. You're just going to keep working your way through the board. But there is one other thing that I want you to take note of, and that is the countdown. Now, this countdown has an effect where basically you don't want this to go beyond 0. Once it goes to 0, it will start getting into negatives, and as it goes further and further into negatives, the enemies that you fight will get more powerful. So it's just something additional to keep track of, because it could be tempting to just go on diagonals the whole way to take as long as possible to reach the boss so that you can get as many buffs as possible. However, you've got to consider the fact that if you go too far into the negative, the enemies will be getting a very heavy buff from this countdown timer. So you've got to balance between getting as many buffs as possible, but also not taking too many turns to do so. Once you reach the first and second boss domains, you will get the selection of 2 bosses, and each of them will have a differing effect. As you can tell here, if we choose the Grizzly, then the boss Swarm will be inflicted with ice weakness, and if we choose the Prowler, it will be inflicted with physical weakness. So this is a good way to adjust the final boss to suit your team, considering it is only naturally weak to imaginary and quantum. So now we're back and we've worked our way through till the final boss, and as you can see in this run, we have taken too many turns and our disruption level is at 1 red, which will go in up to 2 red once we enter into the boss fight. So for this instance, that's going to give the enemy damage dealt increase of 10% and reduce the damage they receive by 4%, and each one would increase that. And then if you go to 6 to 10, you can see it just gets worse and worse. So keeping that to a minimum is ideal. But then you're going to jump in here, and this is going to be our new boss that we have to fight, and it's going to bring in the debuffs that we got through the bosses that we faced along the way. And now this boss, I'm not going to do a full guide into how to beat this boss and teams and stuff like that. That will come in a future video, but essentially this is the new boss that we're going to be looking at. If you want a quick TLDR on some things that you can look at that are going to be strong against it, you're really going to want some AoE. You're going to want Quantum or Imaginary to break it, or the element that you bring to it. This guy is going to summon. Don't use your AoE ultimates at the very start of battle, because you are going to need them once he starts splitting into 2. It is going to be a 3-phase fight as well, like most boss fights that we have, so just keep all of that in mind. And as you can see here, once he does take his turn, we're just going to hold on to our ultimate here with Danny Boy, because we are just waiting for him to spawn those extra units. And here we go, he's going to split in. And so that is why you ideally do want to wait and hold out on your AoE type stuff until the boss splits. But essentially, we're just going to clap this boss, then you're going to come out, and that is going to be the end of your run. Just keep in mind, this boss does get incredibly difficult, especially at the higher difficulties of the simulated universe. So we will do a future video on strategy and stuff like that. Next up, we're going to take a look at the Communing Trial. Now, if we jump over here, we're going to have this grid, and these are additional abilities that you can bring into the Swarm Disaster. Now, these buffs apply to any character using any path. So if we look at this one and you increase your abundance, you're going to get the all-in characters increase max HP by 10%, but you don't have to be in the path of abundance to gain benefits. So it's good to grow through all of these and get all the additional effects that they do provide. Once again, this is very, very hard content, so clearing difficulty 5, you may need to get a lot of these upgrades before you're able to do it, depending on where your account's at. Now, to unlock these, we're going to need to get the extra points into them, and to get those, we're going to be looking at the Way of the Pathstrider. Now, this is going to be different achievements that you have to do, and as you complete them, you can see we're going to get the Communing Trial points, which is how you're going to level those up. But along with that, we're also going to get a bunch of extra resources, being Jades, credits, and also some light cone or character experience, which is really nice. And as you can see here, I've been working my way through, and I've just completed this one here, so I can claim those rewards, and then we can jump in and look at the next one that we're going to do. Now, this one I do have to complete first, so anyone that you're looking to unlock, you do have to unlock any arrows that or lines that connect with it. So this one I have to complete, which is complete the Swarm Disaster difficulty 2 one time. So I obviously have to go back and defeat difficulty 2, which I skipped. And then once I do that, I can go ahead and I can unlock this one. And as you can see, you're going to keep going all the way down and get all those achievements that you need. But you can unlock a fair few of them. This one only requiring difficulty 2 down this far already. So you're going to get unlock a lot of these buffs with only doing the early stages, which is going to help you progress into those later stages of this. Keeping in mind, it is a a permanent feature inside the game. So if you can't do it yet, there is no rush to burst through this thing. Now, the final thing that I want to look at are going to be these quote unquote chapters. Now, this is going to be the other place where you get these rewards. Now, basically to unlock these, you're going to have to get a certain amount of the Communing Trial done. As you can see, this one, I just need to get Nihility to exceed level 6, and then I will unlock this one. Now, what you get from unlocking these is the rewards, and these are some nice rewards. Once again, we get some jades, some resources that are going to help your progression, and then the final reward for doing them all is going to be a self-modeling resin, which obviously we all want, but once again, it's not the kind of thing where you have to get it right now and you're going to be crippled if you don't. It's those nice rewards that reward you for doing it, but don't mean that you have to do it right now, and as it's not time gated, eventually you will get around to it. So that is going to be it for the simulated universe, the Swarm Disaster. That is the basics. Hopefully that gets you guys around it so you're not confused when you jump in for the first, second, third time. As for strategies, free-to-play teams, all that sort of stuff, we will come back with more content on that in the future, but it is still very early days. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing the next one. Cheers.